John Quincy Adams was the 6th President of the United States of America. He was born on July 11, 1767, in Braintree, Massachusetts. His father, John Adams, was the 2nd President of the United States and the Founding Father. During his teens, John Quincy Adams accompanied his father to Paris and all over Europe. In 1785, he returned to Boston and went to Harvard College to complete his education. He went on to practice law. In 1797, he married Lucie Catherine Johnson, and they had 4 children. As Secretary of State under James Monroe, Adams bought Florida from Spain. He wrote the Monroe Doctrine in 1823.
In December 1823, the President delivered a message to Congress and to the world. Ostensibly, he addressed a minor dispute between Russia and the United States over Alaska. But the speech contained a short paragraph that became his legacy. It stated, "The American continents are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers."
The Monroe Doctrine is our statement that we reject European countries coming in and trying to acquire further territorial gains in this hemisphere. You stay in your hemisphere, we'll stay in ours.
It wasn't until 1852 that people began calling it the Monroe Doctrine. By then, it was regarded as Monroe's greatest moment. And yet, he was not the true author.
That's a wonderful example of how the presidency is becoming the central branch of the government. And the president is becoming so important. The Monroe Doctrine is written by John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State. But because it happens in Monroe's administration, it's known as the Monroe Doctrine.
During the first years of the American presidency, serving as Secretary of State was the stepping stone to the White House. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe had blazed that trail. In 1824, John Quincy Adams stood to follow. But in this historic election year, other ambitious men wanted the job.
You have a Treasury Secretary, William Crawford. Got a Secretary of War, John C. Calhoun. In Congress, you have the Speaker of the House, Henry Clay.
And there's also a rising national hero, Andrew Jackson, the victor of New Orleans, Old Hickory. Tremendously popular, very, very popular.
Significantly, 1824 was the first election in which states began to count the popular vote in presidential elections. This meant that a national candidate could accurately measure his popularity with the common man. In 1824, Andrew Jackson was the clear choice of the people. But the presidency was still directly decided by the Electoral College, and that race was too close to call.
The way the 4 of them finish in the Electoral College is Andrew Jackson is first, John Quincy Adams is second, William Crawford is third, and Henry Clay is fourth.
But Andrew Jackson does not get a majority of the electoral votes.
Now, according to the Constitution, the top 3 go to the House of Representatives, which must pick among them. So Clay is dropped. But of course, Clay is the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The unknown quantity in this election is Henry Clay.
Then William Crawford had a stroke. So the contest came down to 2 men, Adams versus Jackson, with Henry Clay presiding from the pulpit of the House of Representatives.
Clearly, some deal was made. The House picks John Quincy Adams on the first ballot, and John Quincy Adams picks Henry Clay as his Secretary of State. Now, Andrew Jackson screams bloody murder at this, and he says this is a corrupt bargain.
It is a scandal. It is a scandal. And John Quincy Adams enters office under this terrible cloud of this corrupt bargain.
Since Andrew Jackson had won the popular vote, he had many supporters on Congress, who did not allow Adams to have any major accomplishments as president. John Quincy Adams had great plans for the country. He supported Henry Clay's American system. This meant that the country would be completely self-sufficient. The economy in the North would be factory-based. Southerners would purchase goods from the North. A high tariff would be placed on British imports to discourage overseas trade. This was called the Tariff of 1828. The American system allowed infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and canals to increase, as well as the development of cities. However, Vice President Calhoun did not approve of the tariff, so he nullified it, and John Quincy Adams was not able to follow through on his plans. Though he did not accomplish much by way of foreign affairs, John Quincy Adams substantially opened trade between various countries. John Quincy Adams ran for a second term of presidency and lost, but his political career did not end there. Adams ran for a spot in the House of Representatives and won. From 1830 to 1848, John Quincy Adams was an active voice in the House of Representatives. John Quincy Adams died on February 23, 1848, in Washington, D.C., of a stroke. He was the founder of the Smithsonian Institution, and he strongly opposed slavery. Though he was very prepared to be president, he was more effective as Secretary of State and in the House of Representatives. His presidency failed because his leadership was weak and he was a poor politician. However, he redeemed himself with his later success in Congress.